If you've listened to the Sports Trapp Podcast, you know that we're more than just a sports podcast. Whether it's Black Lives Matter, the COVID pandemic, we're not afraid to speak on certain subjects, no matter how tough or how sensitive they may be. My ultimate goal in all this is to have a real conversation with real people. So today I brought the crew back along with a very special guest and Andrew Tan from the GrwnTalk Podcast. We're here to ask the question, what is Asian hate? Where does it come from? And how do we move forward to combat it as a people, as a country, and as a culture? Welcome. Enjoy our conversation.
Don't ever underestimate the heart of a champion.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Sports Trapp Podcast. My name is John Trapp. You know Mr. Christopher Rodriguez. Mr. Khoa, how you doing, sir?
Doing good. What up?
Ladies and gentlemen, I brought a special guest to the show today.
Very special.
Too special.
Huh? Oh. These ad-libs are crazy.
Let's go!
Andrew Tan, how you doing, sir?
What up? Happy
Andrew
to be here.
Tan from the GrwnTalk Podcast. Thank you so much for blessing us with your presence, man. I've finally been trying to get you onto the show. Finally came through. He had to sneak out. And
Whoa, don't blow his cover.
You ratting me out right now.
She'll see this. No, but I brought us all together on a very serious topic and a very special topic and close to my heart because I am somebody that is always trying to further the conversation, trying to get a pulse of the people, pulse of our culture, and understand what is going on in the world today. And one of the things that has kind of been troubling me is the whole state of Asian hate right now. And as a podcaster, as a friend, as a brother of many people, of many cultures, you know, it's something that is dear and something that's it makes me think late at night, you know, about how I can reach the people, how I can again further the conversation to where we have a better understanding of where we are all coming from. So as far as a podcast, I want to introduce representation, and I want to have my brother here to bring everybody together and find out where this stuff is coming from and what we could do to enlighten all of our guests, all of our audience, and maybe tap into, you know, why, and getting a reason to where, you know, maybe somebody needs to hear something like this. Maybe somebody needs to hear different sides of the coin, different points of view, different sides of culture. So thank you again, Andrew Tan, for coming. Khoa, always, man, it's a blessing. And again, my brother, thank you for taking the time and opportunity to, you know, be here with me. So, the first thing I want to really get into,
Bro, unity, where are you at?
I was supposed to.
UNITY.
I completely missed that. But
Just trying to add some levity.
I was in the moment, and one of the things I want to, it's troubling me is the fact that I can go back and understand Hispanics and the xenophobia that exists, right? Even, I mean, to use like actual examples, you know, you could say that Hispanics are taking jobs in America, like illegal immigrants that come in, right? There's tangible evidence of that, right? Even if it's like the bottom rung, right? Now, let's be honest, like, we understand that the whole xenophobia on the Middle Eastern Indian side comes from the terrorist attacks, and there's tangible, visual, visceral evidence of that. And I understand, not that I agree, in no way do I agree with any of this, right? But I understand how somebody that's ignorant can put those dots and connect those, right? Now, even in the African American community, there's history behind that. There's tangible evidence of, like, you know, all the systemic racism that comes from that, and all the, you know, the history of slavery. And there's stuff that I can connect the dots with. But what I can't connect the dots with is these sudden, which I see, maybe my eyes have been closed, right?
That's racist.
Right.
That's
And so
that was good. That was good. Sorry, go ahead.
So anyways,
not serious.
I don't understand how people have become more aggressive, more violent towards the Asian community nowadays with something as a like let's if we're connecting the dots here, we're connecting the dots to an inanimate disease that is, for all intents and purposes, something that happened randomly, not because of any reasoning behind of what somebody did to somebody else. You know, there's no dots that I can really connect here other than that. And to see this happening has really troubled me because of the world that I thought we were going in a trajectory of where we were more accepting. But now I feel like it's really taking a step back, and it's frustrating me. It's bothering me to see that come forth, to see it from our people. And then on top of that, sorry to get so long-winded, on top of that is it's coming from the city, Oakland, San Francisco. These are happening within city cultures, not in like some rural part of, you know, Oklahoma, Georgia, even Texas. This is happening within communities of like, I thought, progressive communities, right? Mm-hmm. Now, so maybe I'm wrong here. You guys, how do you guys see that? Is it something that's happening now more often, or has it happened before and we just haven't really noticed it? You know, I'll leave that up to you. I don't know, and I'm really looking for answers here.
Man, there's a lot to unpack there, right? Hopefully we get to touch on everything. And I'll preface it the way I always preface these conversations. I'm one person, right? I'm gonna speak from my point of view, or the experiences that I've had, or the conversations that I've had with different people. And also, I'm an idiot, so a lot of things may or may not be true, right? I mean, you can fact check me, that's fine. But this is not new, right? We talked a little bit about tribalism and separation of people, and how it is a natural part of society building, right? And how that can turn ugly. And that is not a new part against Asians. And you said you can't connect the dots for why the Asian hate thing kind of pops up, right? But to kind of give you a little bit of depth on the history of Asia, right? We're immigrants just like everybody else, right? We came over different parts during the country just like everybody else. You know, historically we're known for like railroad building, right? But we did that alongside the blacks, right? During segregation time, Jim Crow, there were white fountains, black fountains, and then there was also no T-shirts, no dogs, no Chinese, right? I mean, that's part of our history as Asian people as well, right? You talked about fear of people from the Middle East, right? Well, before those wars, we were in Korea and Vietnam, right? I mean, real life internment camps during World War II, right? U.S. citizen, Japanese, some people not even Japanese, right? Got stuck in these things or deported, right? In our land. And so it's not that we have a history that is unlike other people in this country. I think just culturally we've approached some of those things differently, and I think that's one of the reasons why we're in the position that we're in now. And the biggest change is not that there are slights against Asians, right, or Asian Americans. I think the biggest change now is the amount and degree of violence that's happening and the publicity that's happening too. So, you're pointing out it's happening in Oakland and San Francisco, New York, LA, these metropolitan areas, but I don't know that's not happening in Arkansas and Georgia, right? I think just in the cities, there are more camera phones, right? I've lived in these smaller cities, so I know for a fact that there's still a little bit of there jabs at Asian people there. I know for a fact this happens. But I think that what's new is the violence against Asians, and specifically against our elderly. And that's the most disappointing thing. So I know that's a lot to unpack there, but I just want to give a little bit of depth before Khoa shares his experience.
Yeah, the elderly thing. There's no way to look at it without there's no way to make that make sense. I really like when I hear these attacks, on the news, and they're getting a lot of publicity, and of course, you hear a lot of like outrage from the community and whatnot, and which is like to be expected, and I appreciate. It's almost like people kind of like, for the most part, like banding together and seeing like why is this a thing, and blah blah blah. Like, one of the things that I really think about is like, man, like I want to like interview this person. I want to know what is going through their mind of why they are attacking an elderly woman, or elderly Asian woman or man, or anybody of that matter. But like it just doesn't make sense to me. And I know that like John, the more I talk with you about it, like it just doesn't make sense, right? Like there's really no way to look at it without making sense. But to what Andrew was saying, like if you think about our history, I mean, this is a country completely full of immigrants.
Yep.
Everybody in it, pretty much. Especially the people that don't think that they're immigrants. And I think that's the kind of the funny part is like, well, no, your roots are actually not from here. They're from another country that came here. And I think about that a lot, and it's like this is a country built on that. You think about just in the history books of how this country started, and you think about Christopher Columbus, and you think, do people really understand the history and like what his role was and what this country is? And anyway, that's, I think, a whole episode or story in itself. We can really dive into that more anytime. But I think as far as Asians specifically, coronavirus is just one thing. I think that's the most obvious thing to point towards in the last year, right? I think that with our former president, of course, not helping the cause and really just feeding on to the ignorance of people, and you can kind of just see how malleable people can be. It can make people really divisive towards more or less people of your own kind, of your own country, right? And that's one thing, but I can't really put a fact on whether it's been more or less of. But I feel like Andrew's right in the sense that I don't think that it's necessarily that much more. I feel like hatred has always been around. Hatred towards Asians have been around just as there was towards African Americans, towards Hispanics, towards white people. I mean, every culture, every people has their own hate to kind of deal with. I don't know that that's ever really not been a thing.
Right.
I mean, since the day that we stepped foot onto this country to build the railroads in like the late 1800s, we were unwelcome back then, and you can probably be damn sure that you can hear slurs, and there were probably violence for sure. That was that happened towards those first immigrants, right? But guess what? The difference between then and now, again, one of the main things is the level of it's been over 100 years now, so the level of acceptance of people to be able to coexist is much higher now. I would say like it's better, right? More or less, like you think of Houston, you think of these big cities. What are they? They're melting pots.
Right.
Yeah.
And one of the things I love about being Houston is that you can have friends and people in your circles of all kinds, from all different circles and backgrounds. And the way that I grew up, born and raised in Houston. I know Andrew grew up in a military family, so he was kind of all over the country. So he has a very diverse and unique perspective. Let's say I grew up here, so it is not the most diverse, but it is in a very diverse city where I grew up around nothing but Hispanics and black people and other Asian people. And I tell this story, and you know, I tell it jokingly all the time, but I moved from where I lived. I lived in North Houston, in Aldine area. That's where I grew up. And I moved from there to Cypress in like 7th grade. And if you know Cypress, it's another area in Houston anyway. So I vividly remember my first day of school in middle school in 7th grade, and I showed up, and it was like a movie. I stood in the hall, and it was during like a class change, and I just stood in the middle of the hall as all these people passed me up. And the one thought in my head, and I was like, I've never seen so many white people before. Like it just, like that just, like I didn't know that was a thing because of where I grew up, you know, like I was just all around these other cultures, and white people, I guess, just wasn't really a part of that. But, you know, like that's one of the things. And now I see that there are so many other cultures. I've been around different parts of Houston now, and I love all of it. And I love everybody, and I love all different cultures, right? And I think, again, that's one of the beautiful things. And I don't know if much of it is really happening here specifically as far as like Asian hate. Maybe I've heard 1 or 2 cases. But yeah, like I can't put a pin on a reason why. But I'm glad that we're able to talk about it. I'm glad it's being brought out more to light as far as like media and social media, and people are, you know, that's one of the beautiful things. As another thing that is different about today versus 100 years ago. Everyone's got a phone now. Everyone's got a Twitter. Everyone's got an Instagram and a Facebook. So to be able to spread awareness and spread your thoughts and to have it captured on video, that wasn't possible back then.
So I think that, you know, like what you guys are saying, that you don't know necessarily if it's something that's new per se. Maybe it's always been happening. And at the end of the day, like police brutality, I think it's always happened. But we have the ability to capture it now.
Yeah, that's a great example.
More readily, with more ease and stuff like that. But Chris, I think you're really big on, even with me, we have these private conversations of how we talk. Yeah. Like what we say, the terms we use. And I go back and I think, and I almost feel bad because it was like, in my mind, it was innocent, but at the same time, it's like, because we joke so much within our own circles, like you were talking about previously. I don't know if it was on camera, off camera, but you know, you in your army, in your time with other, are you in the army or Marines? Army. Yeah. So you had examples of I guess, you know, terms that weren't that, you know, I would never repeat them, you know, but
oh yeah, I mean, especially when I was a kid.
Right.
Not so much today, just because it's actually really frowned upon. I mean, the Army's a professional organization. Right?
Really?
Oh yeah, like that won't be tolerated.
See,
anymore.
but like in sports, when I was growing up, it was no problem. Everybody was basically like, I don't think everybody was racist, but everybody used racist terms.
Yeah, I think it's different though, right? When you're in your circle or your group of friends, you figure out what's acceptable and what's not acceptable, right? Like, what'd you call these terms? We joke off camera inappropriately all the time.
Right.
I would never say some of the things that we say to a stranger, right? Like I made that joke about you sleeping being racist, right?
Yeah.
Like I would never say that to like a random person, and I would never let a random person say that to me or in my circle.
Right.
And I know Chris is about to say something right now, but as we talk, I might wild out on something, so I just want to leave with a little bit of empathy first, right? So, look, I'm just being honest because this is, when we talk about taking care of our elderly, this is something that's really important to me. And Khoa and I talked a little bit about it, and all of us, because our parents are getting older right now, right? 100%. So when I see some of these victims, I'm like, yo, that's not only my grandma, that's my mom, right? This is like next level, like inner circle type stuff. But when we talk about coronavirus being another straw on the camel's back, it's not even the Kung flu and like how it was approached. I also want to make sure we understand the environment that the last year brought us in, right? So not only are people getting sick, but a lot of people are losing jobs.
Right.
Right. Poverty's going up, unemployment's going up, and if you're poor, you're already getting poor, and you're already probably living close to people of other backgrounds. And so when that happens, it's very easy to turn misconstrue that and to find a target. And unfortunately, between the races, I feel pretty comfortable saying this, Asians are probably seen as the most docile. And then you look at
what did I say?
Right, and you look at who's the most docile of the docile group?
Mm-hmm.
The older ones, the ones that can't
defend themselves.
I mean, like physically and literally cannot defend themselves and won't defend themselves a lot of the time.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So just take that into account. You know, yes, we're a melting pot. There's a lot of things going on, but there are a lot of other stressors going into the equation of why it might be turning physical the way it is.
What were you gonna say, Chris?
Well, I mean, there's so much to unpack. It's truly an onion here. But go back to what you're saying, John. Like, I know you've had a hard time trying to figure out that you can't wrap your head around how there's Asian hate, and I know for some people it feels like it's a brand new thing. But I mean, Asian hate has been going on since the beginning. It's been going on since the 1800s. It's always been present in this country, especially when you talked about like California area.
Oh, sure, yeah.
So the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882 was technically the first law was put in place in the United States to basically stop Chinese Americans from coming into this country. Then you get into the Page Act, and the Page Act is something that targeted Asian women. Asian women have been the most targeted throughout the American history for the simple fact that it became, this ideal that they were the ones coming over here. They're the ones becoming prostitutes and creating, venereal diseases, and they were targeted. So this has always been present. You got to understand too, like during the gold rush, especially. If you think about it, in order for the gold rush to happen, you had to have an infrastructure. Like trains and railroads were built with the purpose of being able to unload, gold. And so when you have over 25,000 Chinese immigrants coming in enslaved for the infrastructure, and then from that standpoint, them trying to continue to build a life here, a lot of white Americans at that time considered Chinese a threat to their own labor, to their own ability to make money for themselves. And if you look historically throughout America, somehow, some way, it's like a revolving door where some new immigrant is basically targeted because they're stealing white American jobs, and this happens on a regular basis. And the reasons why I really feel in my heart of hearts that this has always been something that's been a part of America is I think we can even say the only blessing that's come out of the Black Lives Matter movement, besides all of us coming together as one, as minorities, is the fact that I think for a culture that came to America, right, and was, when you're Chinese, you're compacted in both Vietnamese, Japanese, everybody's the same, right? Yeah. So you come to America and you see the hate that's spilled at you. You see the way you're treated. You're seeing the names that are called to you. You put your head down, and one thing that has always been one of the most impressive things about Asian Americans is the fact that their discipline and their ability to just work really, really hard. I think that this racism and prejudice that came towards Asians actually created a culture within a culture to just keep their head down and not complain and not say anything, even though they were enduring all this. And I think after the Black Lives Matter movement, I think for a lot of Asian Americans, it also empowered them to actually start speaking out against a lot of the hate. And I think that to me is a blessing in a sense, because Asians, all minorities, or anybody who's ever had to endure hate should be empowered to speak out against it regardless. Right. And I also think, too, we talk about white privilege. I think white privilege has been one of these biggest topics that's come out in the last 5 or 6 years, right? We're holding white people accountable, or at least in the sense, we're not blaming you for your privilege, but we just want you to be aware of it. But I also think, too, we need to get to the point right now where we're talking about American privilege. We're talking about minority privilege. We have it, too. So as minorities, we can't glamorize. We can't get mad when stereotypes are portrayed on us as Latin Americans or Black Americans, but then it's okay to make fun and poke fun and glamorize stereotypes that goes towards other races. We have to be conscious of the things that we allow to happen around us. And, you know, I'm always big on that. Like, if I hear someone say something that's inappropriate and there's no, like, we can play around with each other, but we all have that ability to be like, we're cool with each other. So there's an understanding. But that doesn't mean that can transcend to every conversation that you have. And you have to be conscious of how you project that.
Right. And that's what I was going into. You are big on terms, right? So especially what we portray out to the public, right? So what I was getting to earlier was the fact that and maybe unconsciously not knowing, but I said I use the term China virus, right?
Yeah.
But not in a derogatory way, but more like that's the consciousness of what was going on in the time, kind of making fun of Donald Trump, basically, the way he used it, right? And so, but then it even you kind of like, oh no, I wouldn't, you know, go that route, you know. So it didn't offend me or anything like that, but it did make me pause for a second, like, okay, was that not right? So my question to you is like, how important are the words that we portray, the words that we give out, especially with the platform that we have, like how is that furthering the I guess the narrative that it's okay, or is it giving like I guess a match to a fire to be able to then for them to take that and then light a fire? You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, and
it's not necessarily the actual act of being aggressive and violent.
Yeah,
but it's giving, I guess, credence and justification for somebody else to take off.
And I know how we all feel about cancel culture. I think cancel culture is becoming its own extremism in a sense. But at the same time, like it just go back to the ideal of that as human beings, we have to respect one another. And we just have to be conscious that just because I can play with you, Andrew, like that doesn't mean I can play with Khoa like that. And I also have to realize that also too, that the words that I might say to you, someone could overhear it, and that could really affect them. Because I don't know, like when you were talking to us about being called, you know, a chink, a gook, a Charlie, all those things like that, I know that's from Vietnam, because I've watched so many Vietnam movies, and in those movies, those words are used like all the time. And I just look back at my own family history and their inability to not see that these words that they're using could actually do harm. Because if you have a great grandfather who had to endure that, then I'm sure he's explained, or at least at one point talked about that historical impact on him and how these racist terms were used on him. And so you take that with you, you know what I mean? Like, and I just use an example. I've been called so many racist terms in my whole life, and I remember the one time that I was called a spick, and I didn't even know what a spick was. It just resonated like I should not be called a spick. I flipped this kid in the desk at my high school, you know, and he was a white kid. He basically said, "You effing spick," and I was like, "I got your spick right here," and I didn't even know what that meant. I had to go back and look that up. But I'm just saying, like it just feels like sometimes in America that we lose sight on the humanity part. And I think you nailed it. I think you hit on the nail about because of coronavirus and because so many people have been impacted from a social impact and how people are losing their jobs. It goes back to the same thing. You know, you can easily see that across the street that, you know, an Asian American who's went to school, worked hard, became a doctor. Things like nothing's impacting them. Everything's good. While you have worked your heart out in America, and somehow, some way, you're being the one who lost the job and got laid off. And so you start looking at the mentality. It goes back to the 1800s. So there goes the Asians taking my job. You know what I mean?
I would love to get what Khoa was saying, like to interview, well, like not necessarily interview, but some of those people that feel that certain type of way against a certain culture because of they're taking a job or whatever. Like, what is their real understanding of what the situation is going on in their head? And right now, the narrative that's being pushed, in my opinion, more so than anything, is the African American community attacking the elderly and the indefensible, not indefensible, but the Asians that can't necessarily defend themselves. Like, there's a narrative how it's almost like, see, black people are doing this too. You get what I'm saying? They're attacking other races and stuff. Do you guys feel that way, that there's a narrative that's coming along? because I don't know. Maybe I'm reading it wrong, or like there's like a credence for other people to be like, for other people to see like Asians stood up for Black Lives Matter. Now it's not getting returned in kind. You know what I mean? And I don't necessarily agree with that, but I want to know where it's coming from, and I want to know if that's something that you guys, as the Asian community, do you guys see it that way, or you see it like?
You're nodding your head, so you
I think I see what you're talking about. I don't necessarily like, again, probably like agree with certain sentiments, and I just think media and social media, it has a way of twisting things and making it seem like there's always some sort of agenda behind it, right? And it's hard. You have to really kind of just take everything with a grain of salt, as far as like these stories and how things are portrayed. But like at the end of the day, when you see these ferocious and vicious attacks or whatever things happen, I try to take it just as facts, as the things that I see. That being said, that doesn't explain the entire context, right? There's always gonna be context that is misunderstood and whatnot, but yeah, it is one of those things. And again, at the end of the day, like media is a great way to kind of twist things, and I feel like there's always an agenda, and I don't know why, but to make headlines by making people more divisive,
right.
towards each other, right?
That's true.
And it may sound like a conspiracy, or it may sound like a conspiracy theorist in thinking that like, oh, mainstream media is trying to pit, one culture against another and whatnot. And I'm not necessarily saying that, but it's something that I think is valid, and like you never really know, right? But going back to, I just wanted to touch on what Andrew said about Asians being kind of like a docile culture, and I mentioned that to Chris and John before, in saying that like it may sound weird, or may like if you never think about it, but I firmly believe that Asians come across anyway to other cultures as a docile,
That's a great way of putting it.
type of
Like it's perceived.
It's perceived that way, right? And I use this example, and I may, it may be out of line, but I'm saying, like, I imagine if the roles were reversed, or whatever, right? Let's say there's an Asian attack, and then there's a black attack, and they both cause stirs and outrage from their community. Now, this sounds very like barbaric, but if you had to, as a culture, if you had to choose another culture or another ethnicity to go to war with, who are you going to have the best chance at? And people, I think, would think that Asians...
I got lost there.
You know what I mean? Like
he's saying which is the most perceived weaker race.
Okay.
I mean, that's the most blunt way I'm going to put it, right?
Yeah. But I mean, like that's
who
what
could
I'm
you
saying.
win
I know
against?
it sounds idiotic and crazy, but I really think that subconsciously there's some truth to that. Yeah. Because you can't, like, if I'm thinking like, oh man, I want to fight white culture, all of white culture, how am I going to do that? If I'm going to fight black culture, how am I going to do that? Just sheer numbers wise, if you're talking about in this country, of the percentage of the makeup of this country, Asians are some of the smallest numbers. And I know the minorities as a whole is getting bigger, but that's still, we're not outnumbering anybody, as far as numbers in the world. Yeah, for sure. You just look at China, look at the 1.4 billion people that they have in their country, right? But I think that has some part to do with it, right? As far as like people thinking that we are a weaker type of culture. Now, another part of that puzzle that I fully believe in is the myth, if you will, of the model minority. And I think that that's something that...
Expand on that. What do you mean?
You never heard this one?
No.
Yeah.
I mean, if I have, I'm not connecting it, but...
Well, I think it's when we talk about the media and things being pushed in media, it was something that was really pushed out in the press. And I think it really started kind of in the mid 1900s, 1950s, 60s, something like that. And it was, and forgive me, I don't know the exact whole history on it, but more or less my understanding of it is that Asians started really being perceived as the model minority in the hard workers and the people that are like, yeah, they're diligent, they're
we don't cause
easily
trouble.
educated, and yeah, more or less, they don't cause trouble. And as Asians, I think what we were being portrayed as in the media and in the press was a culture that was, like there's a lot of praise put towards us, if you will, right? And while that seems like it's a positive thing, it creates now a type of like, whoa, why are they being praised? It was like we never like asked for it necessarily,
Like,
but now
there's
it's
a certain amount of envy basically and resentment because you guys were
Resentment's a good word for that.
perceived as the model citizen,
The model minority.
of somebody that's an immigrant coming over to this country. They're the ones that do it right, right?
And I also think too, media portrays it as if like those who do come over to this country, it seems like Asian Americans do the most to get the most. Like, you know what I mean? If that makes sense. Like, they come over here and actually excel and actually,
They mad at us now.
add to the community or make jobs. You know what I mean? Like, there's this whole
Do
persona.
you think there's an Uncle Tom
Yes.
aspect to it?
We're super light skinned.
Right. Well, yeah. I
I mean,
so.
I mean,
right. No,
I'm only saying this because when I was talking, right, I got called super light skinned, and I was like, "What are you talking about right now?" I'm like, "That's the way we look at you, right? Because of the minority mindset. It's like you're afforded these privileges as a minority that the rest of us don't get, and even though we're happy for you, we're also pissed because we're not going to get the same shake, right? It's a kind of a Cain and Abel type thing, but it's cultural, right? I think what's important is when he
Cain
says
and Abel.
perceived docile, right? Perceived minority. Because I remember getting in trouble or fights as a kid, and I remember, dad doing dad stuff and was like, did you win? All right, cool. And I was like, but the punishment wasn't go say sorry, right? Like even in my grades, like getting in trouble with teachers, the punishment was never like go apologize. The punishment was you're gonna work your butt off and you're gonna take the spot, right? Like it's a long-term play, culturally speaking, for the Asian community, right? So it's not that I'm not mad as a kid when things are happening to me, right? It's not that I'm not trying to retaliate these things. The play from the elders who are getting attacked now is they understand, okay, well, if you want to beat me up now, that's fine, but I'm gonna be the one taking care of you when you get to the hospital in 40 years. you know what I'm saying? Like that's real.
That's real talk. No, absolutely.
There was a commercial or something like that.
Yeah.
Like,
Wow.
right?
Yeah.
So that's the long term play. But there's that saying, don't perceive my wonderful weakness. What's it? Don't perceive my quietness.
Don't perceive my kindness
for weakness,
Right,
right?
right. Absolutely.
Because
Yeah.
that's exactly what happens.
You said it. I think what you just hit on was actually a truer statement, and things are starting to connect. And like honestly, this is the reason I had this conversation, because now I'm starting to perceive like, okay, this is where the mentality is coming from. Like you guys through empathy have helped me understand a little
Good,
bit. Not
yeah.
that it's right at all, but there's okay, the perception is what's wrong here, right? So when you said don't take my kindness for weakness, it's actually what you really said. Maybe it's a 40 slip or not, I don't know. But you said don't take my quietness
I mean, it's
for
part of it, yeah.
weakness. And I think that therein lies the whole, I guess, rub. Because they think that I can attack somebody that's weak, that's docile, that won't speak up or fight for themselves, and neither were their community. Now
Yeah.
it's a different era now. Like what Chris was saying, one of the benefits of all this, with us coming out and banding together for the George Floyd situation, is like we're all learning that we all have a voice here, and it's not just like, oh, they're not going to say nothing because they're weak, or not just the Asian community, but even the African American, Hispanic community. We're all standing up now, and we're all saying something. We're all recording, and it's all getting recorded.
Yeah, I also think too, like the one thing that I wish that would be from across the board too is that, within the Latino community, we have to start holding ourselves responsible too and accountable for our own racial and prejudice values that we have.
everybody, right?
And I would also say too,
Yeah.
in the Asian community, because you spoke about this last week,
Yeah.
is that there is an older, Asian community that has a lot of xenophobia, racism, and prejudice perceptions, and so we carry this into the world that we live in, and we project it, regardless if it's consciously or unconsciously. We do that, and I feel like that's another thing too, is that a lot of times, I think the youth of today, of all races, I think you're starting to see them to really, really figure out that these things are not right. The only thing that I'm also seeing is that for a lot of us, for a lot of the young Americans and even older Americans, we still don't have a true understanding of our own history and how everything is somehow affected each other throughout the years and generations that's gone by. And I think also, too, is that the one thing that I always hear that we never ever address is that there needs to still be a lot of healing in America for all different walks of life. There's so much healing. It's just almost as if you don't have time to heal. You just got to shut up and move on. And I think conversations like this really, really help the healing, because there's a lot of people watching right now that maybe don't understand, how things were in the 1800s for Chinese Americans.
Yeah, there's nuggets I'm getting all day, every day.
Or maybe no one
Everybody's
understands,
giving
because I almost think that I've always felt, because my first best friend was Filipino, and it was me and him. We were the only two that were non-black living in our neighborhoods, and this was a very, very poor Filipino family. We're best friends, and so I got to see different walks of life in that aspect. But it just feels like sometimes that we don't share enough. We hold everything back in, and then we don't hold each other accountable. And I want to ask you guys this question, because I think you were talking about the perception. And this perception that you work hard and you got to, because I feel like even culturally there is also prejudice within you guys, that you guys actually, Asians, have to have the best job, have to have the most money, have to have the best education. And I also feel like that puts enormous amount of pressure on you as well to be successful in your own right in that aspect. And I think that can also cause even more stereotypes to be perceived. I'm curious what you guys have to say about that as well.
Yeah, we're talking a lot about race right now, and I kind of want to pivot just a little bit.
Yeah.
And when we talk about these attacks on elderly Asian people, I want to make sure that the race conversation is not about the attacker, but the victim.
For sure.
Right?
Okay.
Because when we start doing, they were attacked by a black man, a white man, Latinx, whatever, another Asian person, right? I think that discredits, or not discredits, but it takes away from what actually happened to who it happened to.
Right.
And I don't think it's important. I want to be very careful here. It's important, but it's not. We're fighting the wrong thing, right? We're going against the symptom, but not the actual sickness, right?
The sickness,
right? Because even when George Floyd happened, there's the one Asian officer standing there, and there was a moment when there was some tension there. I mean, just talking straight. But then as Asians, we're like, we don't own that guy, right? That's one person. He doesn't represent us.
Right.
And he made a very poor decision, and he's not our face. And a lot of people on the Asian side showed up for BLM, right? And it wasn't just for George Floyd. It was before, growing up, our communities are so tied together. So I think it's more important to look at the victim, which are older, happen to be Asian people. And when you look at the dynamics and the psychology of attacking someone physically, right? And you look at who the aggressor is versus the victim, this is a power dynamic, yeah? Because it's not necessarily an Asian thing always. Because if it was just Asian, come find me, right? I'm right here.
Right.
But you're attacking older people because you're feeling disempowered. You're not feeling, and so this is the group that you're going after. So it's important that we help protect this group who are happen to be Asian, and yes, they're my people, our people, and we're gonna look after them. And there are ways we could do that, but to turn it into a who attacked us, and that's the race issue, I think that takes away from the larger problem.
Nice.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Like I said, I'm getting nuggets all day, every day. Like the I love that the way you stated that, because it really is easy for us to get caught up. Like there was a question, and I don't mean to chastise any one race, any one person. But there's a narrative that I always felt like there was being, whether it's conscious or unconscious, that there was a certain race attacking a certain race.
It'd
right?
be easier if it was that
And
way. It would be easier
right.
if that were the case.
But that's what I was feeling. So I wanted to be open and honest and sincere when I'm asking these questions. But like I said, I love the way that you brought it back, because it really does. We don't want to lose sight of there's a victimization that's going on here too.
Yeah,
right?
I mean that honestly makes a lot of sense too, and it's always a great perspective because I think too that we also get lost in, on both sides of the spectrum of politicians, both blue and red, is they definitely try to separate us more so with identity politics.
Yeah.
And identity politics is probably the easiest thing to divide us on, because especially amongst us minorities, because it's easier to get kind of lost in that and
ourselves.
Especially in ourselves. And just to penny back on that, I think that is important, because the victims here are the ones they don't even have a voice. A lot of them don't even really have a voice. And so, what is Asian hate? And that's what we're trying to get. What is it? So obviously, it's even deeper than just it being Asian. Obviously, there's something going on in America right now where the idea of targeting what we perceive as someone docile is appropriate, or it's justifiable.
Or it's the easiest thing you can get away with.
Easy thing you can get away with, because they're not going to say anything, except for that one guy who got beat up by that one lady.
I loved it. I loved it.
That was
I loved
awesome. That was awesome. But I think that's I think sometimes we get so caught up in the Black Lives Matter movement or the Asian hate or all these different things that we kind of lose sight of what's really, really, really important, what you were saying earlier, which is the victims, and why are the victims, and what can we do internally together to change that narrative.
In Oakland, there was this group of I guess a text chain. If an elderly Asian needed to go home and they usually walk, they didn't feel safe.
Oh,
you
yeah,
could just
yeah, yeah.
text. And somebody would literally,
And the OGs would come walk.
Oh man, that was awesome. But
It was like a neighborhood watch type of group.
Yeah.
and not that I have a problem with GoFundMe, right? What I have a problem with is that the structure exists for us to get help, to get assistance, but we cannot rely on it to the point where we actually feel safe. Now, why is there police out there if we don't feel safe being policed?
Well, yeah.
Or the non-existence of it?
Well, just
going down that road
knowing.
now.
Well, I know for a fact, just from spending a lot of time in the Asian community, that
At my house.
no. There for a long time. It seemed like a good portion of my friends.
We're not far from Chinatown, so you're
A
right.
good portion of my friends were all different backgrounds of Asian Americans,
Yeah.
and what I learned from being in these neighborhoods and communities is that violence is one of the most, or just crimes in general in Asian community, one of the most underreported. It's one of those things where you just don't report and talk about it, especially when you do also have crime that you have a lot of criminals that are Asian in the Asian community that actually do some horrible things to their own community members as well.
Oh yeah.
So those things, the one thing you don't want to do is call the cops, right? That's what I've been told and what's been shared to me. And I mean,
Is it? Really? Is that it? I mean, I don't know. I'm really I ask you guys as members of the Asian community. Like you said, you're one person.
Yeah.
You're not. You guys aren't a monolith. So I get that, but is that a thought process that exists?
Yeah, I mean, I would say so. It goes back to what I brought up just about how our culture is, especially in America as well, is we're a pretty, in a sense, very self-sustainable type of culture, and we would really like to believe that as well. And I mean, police, I think, is just one of those things. If we can avoid calling the police to handle our matters, we will, not for any specific reason all the time. Not because, but it can be for a plethora of different reasons. But I think a lot of times it's really just we want to know and prove to ourselves that we can handle it ourselves, or on the little more of a sad part, we just take it. And I think that's kind of a part of it as well. And I don't really have the answer for you as far as why that is, but I've seen it. I've seen it in like elders specifically
Really?
where they actually were like, like they've had the chance to like press charges or do this and that for some, random thing, not necessarily maybe like a hate crime,
not like,
but
start
even
trouble.
as something as,
It's not to start trouble. I just think it's not worth their time or energy.
Really?
Part of it. I mean, you want to expand a little bit more on that?
I mean, like I said, but that's from I've seen that firsthand and I've heard of it as well, and I don't know how prevalent that is in other cultures, but I feel like in other minority cultures that is not an uncommon thing as well. Like when things happen, you don't your first thought isn't let's call the cops.
There's
right?
definitely a mistrust with American policing. There's a distrust across the board, and I will say this too, just because you know me, I'm always constantly reading and watching stuff. Then you go back to even look at how the Yakuza is dying in Japan, but before it started dying, it was more powerful than the police, and things you had so much. The Yakuza basically controlled the neighborhoods and extorted so many hardworking people.
Self-sustainable.
So either you paid the Yakuza to protect you, or the Yakuza would hurt you, right?
Yeah. And then
so that mentality comes to the States.
For context, Yakuza is like a Japanese mafia.
Right.
But that in itself that's mafia culture in itself, which you talk about in the States now. It's much bigger than just. I mean, it's the Italians and how
I'm
how
just
they
so
were as
ready
well.
for somebody to attack the wrong grandmother and just like all of a sudden he's like dismembered.
No, but what I was trying to say is
I'm just like-
when you have that mentality and you have this fear, and then you come to America, you also have these hardworking immigrants that come to America, but you also have the same people bringing that same mentality from the Yakuza, or whether it's the Chinese mafia, or whether it's the Vietnamese gangs, and they come here and they do the exact same things in American neighborhoods, right? Like you can go to different parts of Chinatown in California, and you see there's still a heavy influence of,
Really?
And so it's. I mean, think about it. Like originally, when we look at gangs, even American gangs were supposed to basically protect the community, and of course that turned into something way differently. So then you're fearful to even say that this person is extorting me or robbing me. And then, can we really trust the American police that are going to actually protect us? So there's
Maybe
a
there's
lot.
like that not understand. Like they don't think that the American police would understand.
It's not that they won't understand. It's also there's not much they can do, right? Like when I was little, I got my house robbed. Right, we called the police. They did a report. You're not gonna find this shit.
You're not
Right.
Like, and so for an Asian family specific like ours, we did the report just to do the report, more for insurance things, right? But we never expect to see that stuff back.
Right.
Like even my grandpa was like, "Yo, why would you?" Like why waste time doing that when you can go get more stuff or like whatever, right? So it's not even a fear; it's a lack of confidence that is going to be able to be resolved
Right.
with authority figures. A lot of stuff you can handle in house, and that's a big thing in our community. Is we handle a lot of things in house.
They do,
right? We police up after ourselves. So like if a kid gets caught stealing, like we don't call the cops; we just beat up the kid. Right, and then we say like, "Yo, why would you steal from your own community?" Like that's kind of how we would handle it, right? And so
we
when you
beat up kids. Is what you should
apparently.
take away from this.
yeah,
So, but
Be
the
careful, kids.
Hispanic community is completely different. Like the reason they don't call the cops is fear of being labeled illegal, causing more trouble
I'm
to
sure that's part of
themselves.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
To
part of that.
themselves.
On the Asian end, I mean, I think there's a level of that too. I mean, you still have
Especially in the
immigrants
beginning.
here that are not legal,
Right.
and it's not as publicized and probably not in big numbers as Latinos, but that's not something that doesn't exist. That exists for sure, and I think that's a small part of it too. But I think the bigger part of the not going to authorities is just being kind of like that self-sustainable and a very resilient culture.
Right,
And I
right.
believe Asians are some of the most resilient people.
beyond adaptable. As
Not
well.
to say that I think honestly, any one that is considered a minority in America is beyond resilient.
it work.
Facts.
Right?
You've made
that's
it work.
That's
Yeah.
black. That's African
If
American.
you've been here,
that's
if
Hispanic.
you're going on the second generation, you've put in time.
Yeah.
You've put in work.
And that's before you go on, John. Like that's the thing that speaks most to me, and that we have to remind ourselves of is that we're all a part of this together, and the sooner we remember that and realize that, you know, we should be banding together and for each other.
Yeah.
As humans, that's what the end goal is. You know, it's not supposed to be like Andrew said. It's not like we shouldn't be worrying about who the attacker is, and like knowing why would help and understand and maybe like to help eradicate the problem. But at the end of the day, the problem is there, and the victim just happens to be another Asian, right? The victim could have been anybody, but that shouldn't happen anyway to anybody.
To anybody.
Because tomorrow the next trend could be let's just beat up old Latino women. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Nah, what? You get hit with a slipper, dog.
I'm not.
Chancla. I know.
Look, I was telling Andrew, like, I'm not a forgiving person in the sense of like, if you were to take out a life, I'm not like the person to say stick him in jail for the rest of his life.
Oh yeah, you on the Malcolm X type side. Yeah.
I'm like, listen, if we got irrefutable evidence, you are the person on this tape. Let's not waste time. Like, I don't want to pay for you to stay alive. Like, no, I mean, and it's not necessarily like I don't believe in karma or whatever, because I really don't. But I don't think that they're deserving. Like, let's take out the mental illness away from everything, right? And you can't. I get that. But once you've taken somebody else's life, we got to move on. There's no more trying to understand this person and their mental illness. Like, let's take care of them, right? And then whoever's really mentally ill, we'll deal with them before something bad happens. But after the fact, nah, I'm done. I don't know.
I'll just say something real quick. I mean, I struggle with that just about every day. I think about that. I hear these stories. I see these videos. And my first visceral gut reaction,
I'm pissed.
is just the most like, I want the world to come down crashing on
Are
that.
you still really mad?
You know,
I'm like not mad anymore,
Bro,
I'm like sad.
every
now.
time
Like,
you
I'm
post
disappointed.
something,
No, but
like, dude, I am so pissed off.
But that's the thing. I think that over time, if I sit on it, I become a little more empathetic. And, you know, that's one of the things I try to work on a daily basis is to be more empathetic as a human.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah,
you know, like I said, what I tell you, like my gut reaction to a lot of these, and it didn't matter if it's happening to my people or not. You know,
Right.
I remember reading about Ahmaud Arbery.
Ooh.
And my blood was boiling.
That's a tough one.
And it was
keep going, because I'm still kind of livid about it, but I want to see how you processed it and got through it.
but that's the thing. Like I don't know that I've have like a 12-step program that I kind of went through. You know what I mean? It's not necessarily that, but because there's still a part of me that's like, man, that's it. They're fucking guilty. And their lives should be over. And I feel you on that, John. You know, and this is where there's a lot of debate when we come to like, do you believe in the death penalty? Do you not? And it's like, it's very hard. And I know that I want to give you a black and white answer, but there isn't one, because there's always gonna be cases, for lack of a better word, because that is the best. There's cases where, you know, like the system fails itself or whatever,
Right.
and you know that's an undoable action. You can't undo that. And as much as I want, you know, justice and whatnot for somebody who lost their life in an unjust way, you know, again, it could be 90% of the time that's how it should be. But again, how do we know? Is it going to be as cut and dry every time?
No.
You know, and
it's
that's the hard part. And I know we're getting into different parts, and we really get into like the criminal justice system,
Right.
and that's a thing in itself. But and I struggle with thinking that I want to believe that, you know, like everybody should have a chance at redemption and becoming a better person. And
Nope.
you know, but hey,
You've
maybe
cashed your check.
Yeah.
You've cashed your check.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm totally against the death penalty, and I know people out there watching right now I get called all kinds of things on a regular basis, but I truly believe in all my hearts that that everybody's redeemable. And I also look at people's situations. Not everybody who's killed, not everybody who's racist, not everybody who's committed hate crimes were born like that. A lot of us have been molded and created to become that because of their situations growing up. And it doesn't justify a horrible act at all. Murder doesn't. And the problem with it is that if we actually had an actual legal system and a true prison system that actually put criminals away deservingly, we wouldn't feel that way. But
Right.
because there's so many people in prison right now for bukus of years that are basically in prison for absolutely nothing, and then we look at just the prison system in the sense of how many people have been put to death in death penalty that were actually found innocent, it just goes to show you that we're good at putting people in prison, regardless if they're guilty or not. And most importantly, we're not good at helping people rehabilitate and reform. Right. Like we've put so many things on the back burner to even to the point of just racism as a whole. I mean, trying to get back to the focus of racism as a whole, is that we have allowed these things to continue without there being true talks and true solutions. I think I'm all about solutions now more than ever. And I feel you, like, I don't even, like when I watched George Floyd, that was the last time that I allowed a video to really fill me with anger and sadness, because I just thought about if that was Josh.
Right? Oh, yeah.
Or I thought if that was me and my family saw that, how I would perceive. That was the last time that I truly felt this enormous amount of anger, that I started having hate in my heart.
Right.
That I realized that I got to get to the point in my life where I'm trying to find solutions that help not only redeem myself and in my own lack of ignorance in areas, but also help other people reform themselves. But most importantly, work with other people to find real solutions to help our community so these things don't happen. So we're talking about what can we do in Houston, Texas right now that we can protect older Asian Americans here in Houston. What can we do collectively as minorities that's going to improve that? Because if we sit here and we're posting Instagram posts, stop Asian hate, what are we going to do about it? Because we have to be more active than we've ever been before. Because we need solutions. We need to keep some kid out there who heard for the last couple of years his uncle or his grandfather tell him how much he hates Asians. Allow that to not affect him to the point where he thinks it's okay to go out there. Because if we can go out there and we can protect him, at the same time protecting but also educating a person like him, your grandfather is not right. Something's right with his thinking. We need to be the ones to start having these conversations out loud and being able to hold people accountable. You know what I mean?
This is the perfect platform to do that. And
absolutely.
Overall, that's the number one reason I'm even having this conversation. So if you, and I think about the questions I ask, and they may come off as ignorant, but it's also like, okay, if I'm somebody out there and I have these questions, no matter how bad they may sound, somebody's actually thinking this. So I want them to be able to hear through me the same questions they may have, as blunt or as ignorant as they may sound, because I want the response. I want, just like I'm learning right now, and you guys are throwing so many nuggets to me, every one of y'all, and I'm so, like, again, I feel so blessed to have you guys in my circle and on this show. But at the end of the day, I'm learning. We're all learning through just a simple conversation, and I feel like this conversation's coming to a conclusion. And I do want to touch on, like, how do we go forward? But there's one thing, since Chris has been talking, and he brought it up a little bit as well. The last time he felt a visceral reaction of hate through a video was George Floyd. You said that when you see videos now, you're not angry anymore. And me and Khoa are still, Khoa has to come down. I'm still haven't come down. And that's one of the reasons I even asked you to be on the show. And you've wanted to put something out there yourself, right? So how do you compartmentalize and say, okay, I'm not going to let this drive me to a level that is going to be just as ignorant or just as left as I would want it to be?
Great question. Let me clarify. It's not that I'm not angry. It's more so that I'm disappointed than sad, right? In us as a people. I'm angry, yes. And if I were to see that in the street live, I'm not gonna close the door. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like
right.
that makes me angry.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
The act itself that makes me angry, but then knowing that we could help in some way, that makes me angry. And so, and that's why I tell people, and right or wrong, whatever. Like, if you have a real problem, like, come meet me. We could talk. We can not talk. Whatever. But like, don't do it to our elderly because they're not the ones to solve your problems. Right? So you got some frustration or you got some way that you feel about it.
Yeah.
We can figure it out together with words or not, but we're going to figure it out together. But don't do that to them because what makes me upset about the victims specifically is a lot of these elderly Asian people are first generation. Some are second, but a lot more first, right? Broken English from what I could tell from the victims that I've seen. Most of them have lived through a war or two, and then you're going to get taken out by some punk kid. Like, that's
horrible.
That's booty, man. Like, are you kidding me? Like, you're going to live through all your life. You're going to start from the bottom all over again. A lot of these people were like, professional people in their own countries, came over and then, open up their own shops, whatever, and live their own life, stay in their lane, provide for their kids, right? Long-term game. And then you get taken out by a kid. That's some punk shit. Can I curse? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
look, that's some
Say
punk
whatever
shit,
the
right?
fuck you want.
The only
That's
person,
some punk shit.
the only person who can't curse is me.
Yeah, because Daisy will punish you.
Yeah, but that makes me upset. But the reason why I don't let that stay in my heart for too long or act on that is because that, for me right now, won't solve the problem, right? And maybe that's just because I got old Asian, voices in my head right now saying, play long game, right? And so for me right now, I'm like, okay, well, how do I protect them first? Because if you go after the serpent's head, right, and more gross, so going after one attacker is not going to help. You got to educate the masses. You got to spread awareness. But at the same time, you also have to equip the community with ways to protect because it's generational, right? Very rarely have I seen someone go past talking shit to me into the physical. I mean, not since I was a kid.
For sure.
Right? Because nowadays, if you want to talk like that to anyone our age, you're probably going to get hands on you.
Right.
Right? Like, win or lose, like, we're not the one anymore. Right? But you could do that to an older Asian person, and I think they know that.
Yeah.
And so what we need to do as a Asian community, just speaking in general, right, is what we continue to do is we band behind our elderly. We take care of them. Some people are being more passive, going, MLK route. Some people like China Mac are very Malcolm X about it, right? No one's right or wrong about it, but there needs to be awareness, there needs to be education for it, and we have to find a way to protect. In this case, I felt very comfortable saying it. We need to find a way to protect our own.
For sure.
And not as an Asian, as a human race.
Right.
Because you're
There we
right.
go.
Next week could be a Latinx elderly person, right? It could be a black elderly person.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate. So I'm disappointed that that's even the case.
Right,
Yeah,
right, 100%.
yeah.
Like you said, is like don't close the door. And in full context, I think was it in New York?
New York.
Somebody was attacked on the street,
And
and
they
these
just-
two
By a church,
doormen,
right?
shut the doors to the building instead of helping her, and they got fired. Just as a antidote, but like you said, that was the most disappointing thing. Like, you see another human being in a situation, you didn't help. You didn't go and try to stop. At the end of the day, stop it. And I don't know. We only got to see a little clip, but that was enough for me. That was enough.
Yeah, sure.
And so not only is it you feel bad for the victim, but you feel bad for the fact that another human being didn't help, didn't put. So in all of this, in conclusion, I want to bring it back to what you were kind of saying, Chris, was like, you say we need to educate. How?
Well,
Like, what are the methods that we go about, like, bringing awareness?
Good question.
Where it's not just talking each other. Like,
Yeah.
I'm talking to you because you feel of
Yeah, yeah.
like-minded. I'm talking to you.
Yeah.
We're all of like-minded. Now, how do we penetrate people that aren't as like-minded as us, and we're not And we're not talking to each other in a mirror. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to say this too. Like, I also want to make sure, because I have a habit of sometimes speaking as if like I'm the.
You're Asian?
Yeah. And no, but it's sometimes no. Sometimes we can get into the habit of speaking for other people as if you're the representation of them. So these are just my opinions based off of me being open-minded to all different walks of life and cultures. This is what my experiences are. But I want to say this: I think the way we educate is, number one, is that not that we embrace ignorance and not that we're tolerant of ignorance, but we need to allow ignorance and to come to us in a sense. So what I'm saying is, like, I need you to, if you are somebody who thinks that Asians are Chinese food or egg rolls, or you saw Crazy Rich Asians movie, or you think that
Boogie out in theaters now,
or if you think that Asian America is martial arts or Bruce Lee, it's so much bigger than that. It's so much. And so if you have questions, even if they're the most ignorant questions in the world, that you want to ask someone of that's an Asian American, whether they're Japanese, Chinese, Koreans, and remember, they're all different, just so you know. Ask those questions, but us being able to embrace those ignorant questions with, like, okay, you know what I mean?
That's the one.
It's being able to educate them right then and there, so that way they can change enough. Because a lot of people who say ignorant prejudice stuff, if you call them out on it, I've noticed, are like, yo, I didn't know. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So we got to be able to take, because a lot of times we're easily offended. Like I'm easily offended when someone puts Mexicans and Salvadorans all the same as Hispanic, and I'm like, well, no, you know what? I shouldn't get mad at that. This is my chance to fix it and correct it right then and there.
So you find it offensive to just group everybody? Because I always say, in L.A., Texas, I'm Mexican, right? I go to Florida, I'm Cuban. Yeah. I go to New York, I'm Puerto Rican, right? And I don't have an issue with that. But I don't identify myself as just that conglomerate of just one nation or whatever. But I understand that there's ignorance out there, and it's not even, it's benign ignorance, right? It's not even like they're intentionally trying to hurt me or go out of their way to be.
Because ignorance can create hate without us even knowing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So as the Asian community, or people of the Asian community, I should say.
The Asian community.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, like we were saying, I'm not trying to make you a monolith here, but is there a certain type of feeling you get when somebody just groups you as, like, say, I say, oh, you're Chinese, huh? Right? You know what I mean? Like, would you
why
get offended?
you gotta trigger me, John?
Would you get offended? Like, I'm asking you a real question. Like, I know we joke, but like, that's something I would like to know.
Nah, I mean, if it's so crazy, because at this point, if it's something like that, it's just a quick adjustment, right? Like, have y'all seen Minari?
Minority?
You know what I'm talking about, Minari?
No.
It's this movie, all Asian cast, right? It's set in I think the 80s, and it's about this Korean family moving from LA to Oklahoma to start a farm, right? So I just say that context so you understand kind of where the story is. But when you said we have to be open to educating and not get offended if something happens, there's an amazing scene where the Korean family goes to church for the first time, and this little girl goes up to the daughter and is like, "Yo, can you stop me when I say something in your language?" She goes, "Yeah." And she goes, "Ching ching chong bing bang bang," and my heart gets tight.
I bet.
I stand up, watch my sister. I'm like, "What the? Are you kidding me right now? Like, why are they doing this to me?" And then she goes, "Da da da, komo," and the daughter goes, "Oh, komo means aunt in Korean," and the little white girl goes, "That's so cool." And so she wasn't even being ignorant; she was trying to learn. But the way she did about was just so. In retrospect, beautiful, because that's how kids approach it, right? They don't know any better, so they're asking questions.
Wow.
And for me, as a grown man who's experienced being called Charlie, Gook, Ching, all these things, I got tight, bro. I was like, whoa. So when you said we have to be open to that, and when someone calls me Chinese, I'm like, yo, I'm not Chinese. And that's so different from when I was a kid, because when someone said, yo, you Chinese, I'd be like, yo, what are you, white? Italian?
Yeah.
Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Like, what do you want?
Nice,
and my
nice,
dad
nice.
would go, no, we're American, right? That's so different, right?
Yeah. I think it all, for the most part, anything of that scenario usually stems from ignorance, right? But then there's something that just stems from ignorance, and there's something that stems from ignorance and hate.
Yes.
And that's sometimes a harder line to really draw or find or figure out on the spot. And so, like, 2 examples that have happened both to me in my life. Like, I remember being a kid in elementary school, probably couldn't be more than like 2nd or 3rd grade. And some kid walks up to me and says, "Hey, you speak Asian?" You know?
The answer is yes, I do.
You know, and like at the time I was like, you know, like I didn't find any offense to it. Like that was funny, you know, like, and it's just like, and I think it's one of the things too that for the most part, most Asian people I know, especially Asian American, we have a pretty good ability to make fun of ourselves and to be okay with the kind of the running jokes, and also in a sense like use it to your advantage and make fun of ourselves, and kind of that self-deprecating humor. Right. It's not the most healthy. I understand, you know, when we talk about mental health, but that's just something that for whatever reason you kind of just default to, and you don't let things like that usually gets you, right? And I forget what I told him. Maybe I was like, I think I kind of went along with the joke, and I kind of was like, yeah, I totally speak Asian or whatever. Or maybe I told him I speak Vietnamese, but you know, like he didn't know. I knew even as a kid, from myself back then, I knew that he didn't really mean any harm by it. He was genuinely curious. He wanted to know what Asian sounded like.
So what was your second one?
The second one was just a random thought that popped in my mind. This happened a couple years back. We were leaving. Me and my friends were leaving a bar here in Houston, and some guy randomly, as we were leaving, there's a group of maybe like 4 of us, and some guy kind of yells towards, as we walk past him, yells towards my friend, is like, "Hey, what's up, Ling Ling?"
Wow.
Just like
Ling Ling, huh?
out of nowhere, right? And the thing I love about that story is like she was the girl that he called Ling Ling, like straight up bucked back at him. It was just like no hold. And I was like, whoa. And I was like, yeah, like respect her, like, you know. And then soon it was kind of like like there's not many things that would just like straight up like trigger me as far as like anger goes. But when it comes to like I'm very territorial, right? And when it comes to protecting my people and my circle and the people I care about, my family, my culture, like I'm very prideful in that sense. And, you know, I know like all of us, I think probably are too, but some people can probably let it go a lot easier than others. And that's something that's like a quick trigger for me. And because it was my friend, and, you know, and I think about it now, and at the time, I don't know if I was more mad that it was a racial thing or if I was more mad that it was my friend. And, you know, and I
that's a good point.
And it you know, we didn't get into a fight. We kind of got into a little argument, and the guy, his friend, was just like, "Oh, like no, he's just being an idiot." Try to come up to his defense, and then there was a cop that came by and kind of broke everything up, and it was an Asian cop. And I remember like at the time also thinking like, "Yo, dude, come on, man!" She just, you know, like trying to like get him like on my side. But then afterwards, we like cooled down or whatever. And it's a funny story that we think about now. And it's like, "Oh, remember that time that dude called you Ling Ling? Damn," you know, that was, you know. But it's like it's a little thing, right? It's nothing that like escalated into anything. But that's like 2 examples of ignorance. But one of them, maybe it wasn't hate necessarily. Maybe it was still just ignorance. But, you know, we were older now. Yeah. We're all in our like mid to late 20s. I forget how, and that guy probably was as well. So it's like you're at a point now where it's like that level of ignorance you shouldn't have. And it's crazy because it's kind of like I would love to be able to kind of spot check everybody when it comes to things like that. But I guess it's like the level of patience I would have, you know, I would have to learn how to have that with everybody as much as possible, right? You would think
the hard part.
And that's kind of the hard part. And then let's say if it was something even worse where it was like 100% that was meant as an attack and that was a hateful attack. How do you then, you know, use that as a teaching moment? I mean, that's very tough. And that's to me, like, to learn how to be able to do that, that's kind of like the $1 million question, right? If we can all do that as humans, I think we can learn how to coexist. That's the whole goal for me, right?
My main thing with anything in all when you're dealing with anger, a lot of it has to do with letting go of your ego, your pride, and not letting certain things trigger you, and turning around and be like, hey man, I don't know if you know, but that's not the way to go about it. And I'm not upset because I feel like you just don't know. I'm a guess that you're ignorant in a sense, and I don't mean to offend anybody when I say that, but it's so hard. It's so hard to be able to be that of a mind that is willing to put themselves out there like that. Be willing to have that conversation, because that takes a lot of courage. Let's be honest, like with you being of a cognizant mind and not just being triggered all of a sudden and then attacking somebody else, because that's easier to do, right?
Yeah.
But you being of a conscious mind and being like not letting it hit that red boiling point in your own head, and adjusting to the situation and stuff like that. And some people don't have the patience to do that.
Yeah.
That's another issue.
Well, like I said, that's something so quick too, right? And I think about, like, let's say that scenario particularly, like, what if I had treated that differently? What if I had used that and I was in the right mind to actually do that too.
Right.
And I was able to basically say, like, hey, this is like a moment. I could say, like, hey man, like that's not cool. Like, maybe it was a joke to you, but I think that's not cool that you can just like in for lack of better terms, just racially profile us. It's like, what if I did that to you or to anyone else? So like, is that okay? And is that okay? Do you do that to everybody? Like kind of like painting the bigger picture there, right? And what difference that would have made or whatever, right? So I think about that, and I don't know, like that's where it was tough, because it was so quick for me to not see any of that and just see an attack, and then I'm going up and straight trying to be now defensive.
That's something you could tap into and go, okay, well, that person felt like they could do that.
Yeah.
So I need to let them know that they can't do that for me, my people, whatever it is. And it doesn't have to be anything else.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of times that, and Khoa is absolutely right, you cannot educate 100% of the people 100% of the time.
Right.
Because, the car that drives by and yells chink, one, you're not going to get to them. Two, you're not going to change their mind. And then you're just gonna yell out of nowhere. So now you're the crazy person in the street, right? I mean, I've done it as a kid. Like, yo, you can't say this. Like, it doesn't do anything.
They're long.
Yeah, they're gone. I'm just yelling. Yeah. Like, you're like that dude in traffic yelling the person in front of you, and no one can hear you.
No one can hear you.
Right? It's
John.
Okay, I was listening to Obama and Bruce Springsteen podcast, and one thing that really resonated to me, and this is a tenet that I believe in this country so much, is that as we go forward, right, I've seen progress. Like, where I don't know other parts of the world. Like, I know the U.S., obviously, because I've lived and grown up in the U.S., but to know where we came from, it can really literally be a dark history, right? To see where we've gotten to. That progress, even though it doesn't seem upwardly all the time, it's like going like this, zigzag. It's not linear, right? Do you, in these times, if you go back, let's say 4 years, right? Do you feel like we're still on an upward trend, or have we taken a couple steps back, or are we just going left or right, not necessarily up? Because I believe that we are going up, but I don't know how if we taking a stop, because it is, if I believe that we've taken a stop, I get sad. Like, I get like depressed, because I'm very proud of this country. I'm very proud American. I'm very proud to be of a family that is an immigrant who've come to this country and established themselves and made something more of what they could have from another country. Not only just like themselves, but as somebody that has passed this on to their family and me. And I still want to produce and become something bigger for myself because of what they've sacrificed. You know, so everything that they've done for me in this country has provided that walk of life and that possibility for me. So I'm very proud. And to see where we are and to think that maybe we've taken a couple steps back hurts me. And you know, I'm not one to mince my words, but at the end of the day, I always want to go in an upward trend. Now, you guys, what do you think? Where are we now?
I think Khoa makes a really good point that it's generational, right? Like I just don't see like Khoa me being attacked. Maybe I'm naive, but I don't see us being attacked when we're 50, 60 years old. Like I still got hands at 60. You know what I mean? Like but that's what I'm saying. Like I just don't see it. And to put into context, you know, I have a buddy who's white, lives in LA. He actually lives in K-Town, right, Koreatown. And he's like, I never knew that Asian people were getting, targeted, because every time I go into K-Town, I'm scared. That's what he says. I'm scared because K-Town's full of like Asian gangsters. Like if you know, you know,
Real
like
talk,
certain parts
real
of,
talk.
even
Yeah.
in Houston, like if you know certain parts of the city and then certain
Absolutely.
groups and gangs out of
Yes.
Houston, like that's real, right? So generationally,
I've
it's
seen
so
some
different.
crazy stuff in the clubs, dude.
But that's
Dude,
well, that's what I'm saying. Is like
I was scared. I'm just
it's different. Like the model minority that our parents and grandparents are known for. Yeah, we inherit some of that, but just generally speaking, our generation is very different, right? And so we're much better at being vocal, like we're seeing now, about documenting what's happening and trying to find ways to be better about it and you know, support each other, not just within the Asian community, but as a human race. But I think now is a time, and I'll say that I'll end with this. I think even though things are better, as an Asian person right now, I think we can continue to stand together more, and I think we're starting to see that change. And I'll reference an example of the entertainment industry, right? Like historically, you know, we're engineers, doctors, lawyers, whatever, right? We're in professional careers. But now, all of a sudden, our generation and the generation and a half right before us working on breaking into the industry, right? So
time.
now, right, we had our first Asian American lead get nominated for a SAG award, right? First Korean lady get awarded the Best Supporting Actress in Minari, right? Crazy Rich Asians happen. Like it or love it. Like these are big steps for us, right? And so I equate it to
The first Asian lead superhero in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Shang-Chi.
Shang-Chi.
Yep. Like, right, there's all these different things, and maybe social media is targeting me, so I'm seeing it more. I'm like, oh, we're being represented. Who knows, right? But I think we need to continue to put our best foot forward, and this is the old Asian in me speaking, right? We continue to put our best foot forward, play the long game, because I think we continue to do better, get better, and we're in charge of that. You know what I'm saying? I was saying with that.
I understand.
Yeah.
I'm one of the few people that like believe hope, but I actually feel like America is a hamster wheel. Just keep going around and around and around. I for every progress that we make, and I'm not trying to be negative here, but America is the epiphany of what it means when it says history repeats itself. History keeps repeating itself over and over again.
Oh, yeah.
Generationally. And nothing ever truly improves. We see glimpses of improvement.
Right.
And we hold on to that as real, like we're evolving.
Right.
But it always comes back to the same thing. And that's because America doesn't want to heal. They don't want to take the Band-Aid off the wound and actually fully address America's history. Because the ideal of acknowledging that America and what it's done in history is horrible means that you take away from this country being the greatest country that's ever been formed.
Right,
The problem with that mentality is that, to me, nothing would be more of a beautiful story than America redeeming itself by acknowledging everything it's done incorrectly. That, to me, would make it the most powerful country. And unfortunately, we don't think that way. And that saddens me a lot.
Not to pinpoint one thing, right? But in that same vein, as much as I see we may have taken a step back, or history repeating itself. Don't you see that? Don't you feel like when Obama became president that we seemed to be taking a couple steps forward?
No, because he created more hate. It created more hate amongst white Americans who felt like, okay, there's a black president now. He's going to forget about me, because they were told that because of the black president, because now there's a minority movement, and now white people who work hard are no longer important in society. And this is what stemmed, and this is what created a lot of the following that was behind Donald Trump. This was a part of America that kind of got forgotten. Rural white America, poor white America.
Yeah.
So yes, we had a first black president, and honestly, I don't even like us even saying the first black president, because we had a first minority president, because he's biracial just like me. That's how I took it.
Right.
But the fact that we even had to emphasize him being a black president just goes to show you how long it even took for there to even be a
100%.
president of a different race and color. That shouldn't even happen.
Yeah.
Look how long America's been around. So we can praise, we had our first black president. Don't you think we've done more? No, we haven't, because at the end of the day, we saw racism in the last 4 years at its highest platform we've ever seen it before. Yeah. Across the board. We saw people given a platform to just be as hateful. Whether Donald Trump is racist or not, he realized that if he gave these people a platform, they could speak their mind.
Stand by for a second. Hold on. Stand back, stand by.
That this would invoke more followers and more votes. And even right now, we're looking, when I say history repeats itself, look what's going on with voter suppression right now. Look what happened in Georgia. So don't sit here and tell me for 1 second that America's gotten better, because it hasn't. We're just fooled, because every little win that we think we get, because we want to believe and have hope, we exploit that as something so much bigger, but it's not. It's never going to be better in America until we're willing to have a deep, uncomfortable conversation with each other and find a way that we can all heal. And the problem with America right now is that so many people feel like they're the victims. They forget about acknowledging the real victims. And don't get me wrong for 1 second that at some point in our lives we haven't been victimized. But hey, where are you in your spot in America? And I'm not telling anyone that they have to be sorry that maybe they had it better than somebody of Asian descent or Hispanic descent, or even poor white people, that they didn't have it as hard. The problem is that we all have to acknowledge and empathize with each other. We all have to take off that Band-Aid that America keeps putting on. I mean, this is 200 years of just Band-Aids nonstop, and no one ever fixed the wound. That's why when we do have conversations about race, people get defensive, why people get offended, why people get so mad, why people say, well, I didn't own slaves. It doesn't matter if you own slaves. Let's just talk about the fact that there was slaves owned. It's a great conversation to have, and if it makes you feel uncomfortable, get over it because you want us to forget about it, just fucking acknowledge it. Mm-hmm. That's what we need to do.
Right.
So that's why I say America is just a hamster wheel. We continue to just go around in circle, because we don't want to offend people. And then just look, like, now we're in a point where cancel culture has dictated everything. So we're suspending, or we're going to get rid of a player or fine him, right? But no one's rehabilitating him, right? We just talked about what we could do to improve things. We're not improving. We're going to fine him, suspend him, but we never fix the situation. There's no rehabilitation. So what are we really doing? We're canceling somebody because 10 years ago they said something that was really ignorant. How about we fix the situation by making sure this doesn't happen, by taking that person, like this football player you were talking about. How about we just make him spend a whole month? The NFL just, this is just out the park thinking. He has to live with that Asian family for a whole month. And understand what they go through on a regular basis. No, it's not, because guess what?
We would do it too, though. That's crazy.
The problem is and they would be the most accepting race. And that's the crazy thing about it, is like, what are we really doing then? We're telling him he's going to come up with people are going to come across it as not being, authentic as an apology. He's just saying sorry because he doesn't want to lose any more money, or because he doesn't want the backlash. How about he take we take the road where he just spends a whole month with the Asian family and just see what they have to go, to see the ignorance that they have to deal with. So that way he's more conscious that words do impact people. Saying things do impact people. You know what I mean? Because suspending him and taking away his money is not doing anything.
Right.
At the end of the day, we got together, you have a point of view. You have a point of view. You have a point of view. And I love the fact that we all have different opinions. And I think that through any situation, when somebody watches this, they're going to have their opinion spoken for, spoken about, and I also, an answer if they had a question. And that's what I wanted to do today with this show. And I can't thank you guys enough. This has been an educational for me, like 100%. I don't know about how you guys feel, but it's
like therapy, bro.
like 100%.
Sorry, I got so passionate.
No,
That's good.
100%.
Good.
Like I think people need to hear that point of view too, because like I am an optimistic person when it comes to this country. So much so that when I see stuff, it hurts me, right? And I feel a certain type of way. You may have a different point of view, but you have a point of view somebody else might think is something similar, and they get to hear it, coming from your side, and you guys as well. Everybody has their little niche or thought process spoken for. So you don't have to apologize for anything.
I just also want to say too, because it's so passionate. Sometimes the passion can get some people can interpret it that I'm not proud of this country. And the thing is I'm so proud of this country because I have the ability to sit with you guys right now and talk about this.
Right.
And I'm proud to be American. I've never ever wished I wasn't American, because sometimes when you speak out against the atrocities America has done, people automatically see you're not a patriot. I have friends, I have family members that have served. I once tried to serve, and the thing is that like I am so proud to be an American citizen. The flag means so much to me, but I also understand what that flag means to other people as well.
Right.
And I come from a passionate place because of I know that America could be what we all envision it to be,
right.
if we're willing to put in the work. And I come from a place where I lived, and you know this, John, around the most racist people that are my own family members, even my own mom and dad. And it took me the last 7 years really, instead of hating them so much and distancing myself, making more effort to try to help redeem themselves in just the worldly views of things. That it's been a long road, but now I'm even seeing more progression with my own mom and my dad that I never thought I would ever see. And that's for me having these hard conversations, holding them accountable and telling me, that's not right. Don't say that shit.
Right.
That's horrible. This is what it does to other people.
Right.
That I know that if we just do the work, we can really make real impactful change that no longer feels like a hamster wheel or us hoping it's going to get better, or maybe feeling like we're taking steps, we're taking back, that we actually can see significance around us across the board.
Yeah.
I think you should drop the mic, Chris.
I vote for you. Grab it one time.
Guys, Khoa, you have anything else to say in closing?
No, I think that's everybody had great points. Yeah, Chris, that was great. And I think that, the more I think about it too, it's one of the things I feel that is changing more, and that will, I think, continue to be an upward trend, is it being more normalized for it to make it your obligation, in a sense, to be a part of that process. And I think that's one of the things that has been a lot less common before, and which is probably why it felt like, and that could be a very generational thing. I speak about like people of like our age and our generation, and the way that we grew up and what we had around us, and the way that we handle things is different from the way that this generation is growing up. When you have social media, you have technology all around you, it's different. Now everything is just out there in the open, and they speak out and stuff a lot more, where I think for people like us, we're very much more used to internalizing things and kind of like handling it on our own in our kind of closed off world type of way, which is like good and bad in a sense. It can be good for some things, but it can be also terrible for other things, and so I think now that more things are more trending out to where people of all kinds have more of a voice, I think that's what's going to be great, and everybody should be able to embrace that and use that to the advantage of moving this world and this country specifically along on that upward trend.
Right.
So I think whereas before we may not have had a sense of pride enough to really speak up against like that, something like I said about someone else being ignorant. Maybe it wasn't my place back then. I never felt like it was my place to step in and tell you what wrong you were doing.
Yeah, that's a good
but
point.
now maybe it is okay to. And now, even if it gets brought back with a little bit of a fight back, I think it's going to be more socially acceptable now. And I think that it should be
A1.
that we all can just call each other out, and just be like, and just hold each other to a higher standard. And until everybody, and that's like completely normalized and everybody can do that to each other, then I don't think we're really going to be on that upward trend. You're right. I think we're going to be in that
Hamster wheel.
Again,
I said this, 3 hours ago when we introduced Andrew.
Yeah.
He has his own podcast. And one of the things I like about his podcast, he's always asking people for nuggets.
speak into the microphone.
Oh, I'm sorry. He's so
What are you doing?
he's always asking for people insight to speak to his son. But now I don't know am I privy to say
Go ahead, whatever you want.
that
He already put it out there. So
no, I didn't. So
What was it?
now when your two sons look back on this,
Yeah.
congratulations.
Shooters.
Steph Curry.
Steph Curry in the.
So when your two sons look back on this, keep in mind it may be a completely different time.
Wait, first of all, will you let them watch our show?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, just making sure.
Of course.
What is the
I'm
what
gonna
is,
cancel all the stuff you say though, but
Makes sense.
what is something that you would like for them to take out of all this? I know it's a big conversation, but
Yeah.
of this conversation, what would you like them to take from this to carry on into their
that's a
own?
good question, bro. That's a solid question. I think it's hard growing up, period, right? And I'm 100% Viet, like 100%. And my wife Taylor, she's Mexican white. So my kids are mixed,
Nice.
right? So they're not gonna have full Asian hate. They're gonna have just like weird minority complex, right? And so what I would tell them is lead with love. Focus on what you can fix. Educate where you can. And don't be afraid to learn and to share what you learn with people, whether or not they may be ready to receive it. Because you may drop a nugget on somebody that maybe 15 years down the road they'll recall and impact it. But you have the power to do that, and you're probably in a more privileged position to do it because you're mixed. So you're gonna be exposed to a lot of different things. You're gonna be exposed to all these uncles and aunties I hear who just talk wild shit, and you're gonna be really confused. But lead with love. Is what how do I put that in a bow? And yeah, two shooters. Your mom's pissed now.
Congratulations again.
Thank you.
Like I'm one, I'm proud of you.
Thank you.
Two, I think you're doing a great job as far as being a father, and your sons are gonna be
Thank you.
Proud to know that the father they have has done all this and represented their family very well. So again, congratulations and congratulations too on your marriage. Hey,
Oh, yeah.
he said wifey. So I completely missed that. Well, like
You were on the live too. Oh, you come
I
on
missed
later.
it on the live. Right. I didn't get that part. Yeah. What's it look for?
I'm just looking at you. I just making sure you're speaking into the mic.
Oh, he's feeling a certain type of way that you've committed yourself to somebody else.
No. He knows why I'm mad at him. So you can understand,
Because I work with your wife.
see, because he works with my wife. My wife knows about all this stuff 100 million times way before me. Like it's so ridiculous. It's just like, and then
I guessed it.
No.
I guessed
but
it.
then, no. But what he does is he low keys. He'll be like text messaging, and he'll be like, "Yo, I miss you, and I just wish we could hang out." And I was like, "No, you don't, bitch. You're over there. You're not even telling me anything that's going on. It's like super incredible in your life." And I'm always the last to know. And I always get like, honestly, I'm not gonna lie. I feel a certain way sometimes, man.
It's hard to share incredible news with you when just being your friend is so incredible.
Oh, wow.
Can you show me Steph Curry later?
I'm gonna use that on you, Khoa.
No, honestly, I want to say thank you so much for coming on to Sports Trapp Podcast. I think John and I both really appreciate like GrwnTalk and what what you're trying to do, because we're both fathers, and just the fact that
we're all here married with fathers that we appreciate.
Well,
what
here-
you
Got kids somewhere.
Hey, let me tell you. But you know what? And I say that because one of the people that I'm sitting next to right now, I know when he has a chance to be a father, he's gonna be an amazing father.
my
Khoa.
God.
Yeah.
Like Khoa, you don't realize.
For
you
being
don't realize
single, I can't believe how much
a great husband and a great father, like to the point where you're gonna take all the shit that we've done incorrectly, and just like you're the type of person that really learns from people's mistakes. That's what makes you such a great person. And I think that we couldn't have had a better group of men talk about this stuff going on in the community, and most importantly, it's like it's so dope to be to just be in the presence of all you guys. So appreciate it.
Yeah, I mean it's let's continue the circle jerk right now. I just
Slay the dragons.
look.
God,
I mean,
I hope it's not the same thing with shots and thoughts when we're
I mean,
drinking.
with GrwnTalk, right? I mean, we joke around, we have a lot of fun, we talk about some serious things. But I appreciate just doing this with a group of men. I think that's really important for us to do. And you asked about my son's watching this one day, and it's going to help them navigate these conversations and situations. Because to Chris's point, it could be a hamster wheel still. They're still going to deal with a lot of these issues, and maybe in different forms.
Right.
And so it's important that we have these, and I'm happy that we got to do it. You guys let me be inappropriate and curse and all these things, and still.
There's no rules here on Sports Trapp.
Well, in that case, why am I wearing pants?
Well, because we don't want that to get confused with the other mics. Okay.
Oh,
It's so bulbous.
John is loving this right now. John is.
Leave all that in, please.
Yeah, boy,
That's what
sorry,
she
Red.
said.
Okay, that's 2, baby.
2 tongues.
Ladies and gentlemen, this has been a Sports Trapp production. Thank you so much for joining us. And I would like to say thank you one last time to each and every one of these gentlemen. Thank you so much for having this conversation with me. I have learned so much from you guys. Thanks again. And I am signing off. I'm out.
Peace.
Yeah.